Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Head to the boonies to the ancestral hovel, her husband chuckled, shooing his wife and daughter out onto the street. But upon seeing what had been bequeathed to her, at this early hour, the preschool's changing room resembled a bustling aviary. The toddlers chirped away, oblivious to their parents' pleas. Almost exclusively, mothers, with a few rare exceptions of fathers, hurried to hand over their little ones into the nurturing hands of the caregivers. Carla Rodriguez, too, skillfully dressed her daughter, quietly coaxing the little mischief maker. "Diana, Mommy's running late for work. But you'll help me greatly if you behave," she said. Her daughter wasn't particularly concerned about Mommy's problems and continually got distracted, testing her mother's patience with her disobedience. Yet Carla showed no sign of displeasure, continuing to persuade the little troublemaker. "Diana, just sit still for a minute. Understand, the sooner we change, the sooner you can join the group and play with the other kids." The girl nodded obediently, but moments later forgot her promise. Carla Rodriguez patiently endured her daughter's defiance. Over the years of family life, she had learned self-control, a trait even her husband acknowledged. "Carla, you're like that mythical tin soldier, nothing can faze you." Though Diego's comment on her resilience wasn't exactly positive, that aspect of her character irritated her husband, among many other things. He always found something to nitpick. Just yesterday, Diego had launched into a whole debate over buying new sneakers for Diana. Carla had merely hinted that the child was wearing tattered shoes, but that was enough to unsettle Diego. Initially, he interrogated Carla passionately about why the sneakers bought in spring had worn out so quickly. To this accusation, Carla firmly responded, "I'm not the manufacturer of children's shoes, but I can confidently say that the users themselves are to blame for their quick wear. Diego, remember your own childhood. I'm sure your shoes wore out quickly too." Diego didn't like it when Carla tried to compare him to their daughter. He rebuffed her in a lecturing tone. "Unlike some, I was very careful because I understood how hard it was for my mom to support a child." After this convincing remark, Diego moved on to the second part of his parenting work, namely reprimanding. He accused his wife of wanting to waste his money with an outstretched hand. The third, final stage was the shortest, consisting of threats. Usually, her husband didn't scare Carla very much, and he never mentioned their 4-year-old daughter in this respect. However, yesterday he broke his principle and warned both his wife and 4-year-old Diana. "Remember, all your attempts to bankrupt me will simply end with me denying you pleasure," her husband growled, looming menacingly over the child as she giggled cheerfully. Through gritted teeth, he added, "I'll see how much you and Mommy will laugh when you find yourselves out on the street." Of course, Carla could have reminded her husband about her share in the family budget. She could have told him that as a father, he should care for his child instead of threatening her daughter. But Carla knew the consequences of standing up for herself, so she remained silent. The most humiliating part of these disputes was that lately, she had started to accept her husband's taunts as normal. In other words, such scenes had become routine. After venting his frustrations, he always generously sent her off to the kitchen saying, "Hope you've understood. Go prepare dinner." Carla headed to the kitchen, feeling her emotions boil inside. Left alone with her thoughts, she wound herself up so much that she couldn't sleep afterward. The previous night had been spent without rest, her mind racing and scattered. Carla had long ceased paying attention to the constant headaches. Her grim fate was momentarily diverted by the cheery voice of the educator. "Carla Rodriguez, I'm glad you didn't leave. I meant to speak with you yesterday." The young mother assessed her daughter's appearance critically before turning to the educator. "I'm listening, Elvira Lopez." The children's mentor, bubbling with inexplicable joy, announced, "Next week, our nursery will host an autumn ball." Elvira Lopez paused to emphasize the importance of the event. In the mother's mind flashed the thought, "She's going to tell me how much we need to contribute to the sweet table, and I'll have to beg Diego again." But the young woman's assumptions were mistaken. Truthfully, this did not cheer Carla up. Instead, the educator's gentle request only further disconcerted her. Elvira Lopez, with the same upbeat demeanor, continued to explain. We hold such events every year and intend to continue this good tradition. Carla nodded uncertainly. Yes, that's very nice. Diana loves participating in festivities. Elvira Lopez was even more delighted. I'm glad you support such initiatives because one of the main tasks of educators is to foster connections with the parents of our charges. Now, regarding the autumn ball, to make the celebration vibrant, we've decided to make it a costume ball. But don't worry, Carla Rodriguez, roles have been assigned based on each child's interests. Carla tensed up, and after another meaningful pause, the educator solemnly announced, Diana has been assigned the role of an apple tree. A foreboding feeling crept into the woman's soul, and she asked hesitantly, and what is required of us? With the main details already covered, Elvira Lopez decided to switch to her usual conversational style. Carla Rodriguez, why ask when everything is already clear? You need to prepare an apple tree costume. It could be a dress adorned with ripe fruits. It would be nice if you had a headpiece to complement the main attire. In short, let your imagination run wild. Also, Diana must memorize a short poem on the theme. Not too much, 4 lines will be sufficient. Diana bounced in place. I know about the apple tree. She spread her arms like branches and theatrically recited, the apple tree bent its branches all the way to the ground. Elvira Lopez looked warmly at the girl. Well done, you've remembered the poem right away. Later at home, you'll learn the entire text with Mommy. For now, run along to your group. The girl skipped happily into the main room of her group, where her peers were enthusiastically playing with toys. Elvira Lopez, turning back to Diana's mother, continued. You have a very gifted girl, she catches on to everything almost instantly. The mentor's praise was pleasant, but Carla was more concerned at the moment about creating the costume. She had already mentally calculated how much this endeavor would cost her and immediately imagined her husband's displeased expression. It seemed she had momentarily disconnected because the educator gently touched her hand. Carla Rodriguez, what do you think about the apple tree costume? The woman replied despondently, overall, not bad, but it's too troublesome and there's hardly enough time to make a full costume. Maybe we could find something simpler for my daughter? After all, in autumn, it's not just apples and pears that ripen, but also vegetables like cucumbers or carrots. The educator gave the young mother such a look that she already regretted her statement. But it was too late. Elvira Lopez, not hiding her amusement, said the role of a cucumber would suit a boy more, and Estela Perez wanted to be a carrot. The only alternative to the apple tree is a potato. Would that option suit you? Carla instantly pictured her daughter in a gray sack-like outfit and shook her head. No, we'd rather stick with the apple tree. The news of the upcoming children's celebration made Carla Rodriguez forget about the work awaiting her. She strolled slowly down the street, trying to digest the information she had received from the daycare. From behind came a sarcastic remark. Carla Rodriguez, I see you're not hurrying to work. You're already 8 minutes late. Carla froze in place. The head of the caretaker group and her immediate boss closed the distance between them in 2 steps. Carla, I don't hear a reasonable explanation from you. Or do you think you're in a special position here? Eugenio Jimenez frowned. Carla Rodriguez, for God's sake, spare me unnecessary details. I've told all of you many times that your family problems and other matters shouldn't affect your work. Instead of making excuses, you should have hurried up. I'll let you off this time, but next time, you'll lose your bonus for being late. The young woman dashed towards the administrative building. She was very afraid of losing the job she had struggled so hard to get. Before this, she had worked at a vegetable base, washed dishes at a restaurant for a few months, and tried to train as a junior medical nurse, or simply put, a sanitarian. But even in the surgical department, she didn't stay long because the sight of blood and open wounds made her feel queasy. Carla heard about the vacant janitor position at the mayor's office from her neighbor on the first floor, Evelina Diaz. This active retiree led a very active lifestyle and spoke critically of her peers who preferred sitting on benches. Before retiring, she herself had worked as a secretary in the city administration, so she knew the latest news firsthand. Evelina Diaz occasionally asked the young neighbor for help with household matters and once decided to repay her. "Carla, we see each other every day, but you're always running away." The young woman replied with a smile. "Things are tough, and household chores take up a lot of time. Now I'm also looking for a job." The elderly woman became interested. "But why? Aren't you working at the hospital?" Carla admitted, "That kind of work isn't for me. I can't calmly watch people suffer." Evelina Diaz nodded vigorously. "Oh, I'm a scaredy cat too. In my youth, I dreamed of becoming a doctor, got into medical school, but fainted at my very first practical session. They revived me for half an hour and then said, 'Go take a walk, girl, medicine isn't for you.' So, I became a secretary, and I don't regret it at all." The elderly woman paused for a moment, then cheerfully continued, switching to informal address. "Oh, I'm glad I met you. I don't know if you'd be interested in a janitor's job, but I heard there's an opening at the city administration. I'll tell you straight, it's not prestigious work, but it's not dusty either." Carla was delighted. "Thank you for the tip. That job would suit me perfectly." Indeed, compared to the janitorial position, the administrative building had many advantages, although the pay was slightly lower. When Carla told her husband about her decision, he grumbled disapprovingly, always looking for the easy way out. "I got a lazy wife. Not only does she lack education, she tries to make her life easier." Diego never cared about his wife's health, and all their years together, he never once wondered how she managed household problems alone. Raising their young daughter also fell entirely on Carla's shoulders. But the young woman lived with the hope that someday the sun would shine through the clouds. When she was young, Uncle Federico often said, "Carla, never hang your head. Remember, the sun only hides in the clouds for a while, then it comes out of its hiding place again." Life is like that. Any trouble or adversity is temporary. Thinking of her mother's brother, Carla realized she hadn't called him in a long time. She mentally reproached herself. "Uncle Federico did so much for me, and it's very unfair of me to rarely think of him. It would be nice to visit him." But she immediately pictured how her husband would react to the idea and just sighed heavily. Diego Rodriguez exited the bank in a wonderful mood. Today, he intentionally skipped lunch to personally check the balance of an account he had opened long before marrying Carla. The results exceeded his wildest expectations, and he wanted to prolong this joyful moment. A happy thought pulsed in his mind. Dreams do come true. Blessed be the day I decided to open a bank account. Today, I can consider myself quite wealthy. And what will it be like in a year, 2, 10? Diana headed towards a small square directly across from the bank. Here he could spend another half hour alone with his thoughts and dream about the future. Diego Rodriguez loved to dream. Dreams were the cornerstone of his life. They formed the basis of all his future plans and were the main guiding light for the ambitious man. Diego Rodriguez settled on a free bench and happily basked in the gentle rays of the autumn sun. His soul rejoiced, and he wanted to shout so loudly that every resident of this city could hear him, "I'm a millionaire. I've achieved what I've been striving for all these years. But I'm not stopping there. I will definitely become a multimillionaire. And then everyone who used to laugh at me will know who Diego Rodriguez is." But he didn't shout. Sitting on the park bench, the man quietly indulged in his favorite pastime. He dreamed. Just like when he was a boy, Diego used to bask in the sun on a rickety bench near the entrance and dream. All his friends had modest desires. Some dreamed of a racing bike, others yearned for a phone that haunted their nights, and some fantasized about fashionable clothes. The ultimate desire of third-grade student Diego Rodriguez was $1 million. Even at such a young age, the boy imagined what this sum looked like in bills of various denominations. In his fantasies, the boy projected far into the future, many decades ahead. Diego saw himself as the owner of a 2-story mansion or envisioned himself behind the wheel of a cool racing car. These visions were so realistic that the boy didn't want to return to reality, where everything was gray and dreary. In their home, there were often several days without bread, and he and his mother ate thin soup with rotten potatoes to stave off hunger. While Flora Moreno worked like a cursed woman in 2 jobs, she couldn't even provide the minimum that would have made life tolerable for the small family. Diego looked with envy at classmates who devoured sandwiches with smoked sausage and other delicacies during lunch break. But such delicacies were beyond Diego Rodriguez's reach, so he could only swallow his saliva, which abundantly flowed from the gastronomic aromas. During lunch break, he walked with his head down to the school cafeteria, where he received free lunches every day. The kids laughed at him. "Diego, aren't you sick of that free slop yet?" Francisco tried the hardest, whose father owned a car dealership in the city center. He contorted for the audience's amusement and asked in a sympathetic voice, "Diego, maybe you want to have a bite of my apple?" "I did take a little bite, though." "But you're not proud, are you?" Francisco's performances usually ended in universal laughter, but Diego didn't run away, crying from insult. In response to such provocative jokes, the boy sometimes resorted to fists because it was the only way to defend his dignity. Over time, the bullies less openly provoked him, but the teasing didn't stop. Diego often heard behind his back, "Son of a mechanic," pretending to be a big shot. They laughed at the poor boy and the girls, which struck a painful blow to the young man's pride. In the evenings, Diego dreamed that when he became rich, he would marry the most beautiful girl, and all his classmates would surely burst with envy. Of course, he didn't share his dreams with anyone. Only once, completely accidentally, in a moment of revelation, he promised his mother, "Mom, just hold on a little longer, I'll be rich very soon and then I'll buy you whatever you want." Flora Moreno looked sadly at her son. "My dear boy, if I want anything, it's only good health. I'm feeling quite unwell lately." These words from his mother stuck like a thorn in Diego's mind. He himself noticed that things weren't entirely well with his mother's health. Flora Moreno often complained about her heart. "My heart is acting up again." "It's nothing, I'll sit for a bit, and it'll calm down." His mother always felt guilty about her weakness and tried to justify herself. "I probably work too much, that's why I feel so bad. It won't be long now, just until you finish school, then go to university, get married. And I'll be playing with grandchildren." This admission surprised Diego. He realized that his mother also had dreams, but hers were entirely earthly. Her main goal was to make her only son happy. Later, Flora Moreno confessed that every month for many years she had set aside a small amount from her paycheck for his education. The woman showed her son her stash, and greedy sparks lit up Diego's eyes. On that fateful night, he couldn't sleep because the thoughts of the money his mother had set aside for his education wouldn't leave him alone. Diego mentally calculated what he could spend this substantial sum on. He felt drawn like a magnet to the drawer of the dresser, where beneath a pile of bedding lay his mother's stash, and a nagging voice inside him whispered, "Why hesitate? Take a few bills, your mother won't notice." This voice grew louder and more insistent, and Diego even got out of bed, but just in time he came to his senses. "If my mother catches me, it's guaranteed trouble." He covered himself with the blanket over his head, trying to drown out the voice that was urging him to do something dishonest. Sleep crept up on him unnoticed, and he woke up only when his mother was getting ready for work. Flora Moreno got up very early because from 6 a.m. she cleaned the entrances of several neighboring houses, and closer to lunchtime she rushed to the school to tidy up the surrounding area. Waiting for his mother to leave, Diego rushed to the dresser. His hands were shaking badly, and his throat constricted with a spasm. After taking several deep breaths to calm himself down, he pulled out several bills from the thick stack of banknotes and whispered, "It's okay, Mom won't notice." "Well done, Diego, you did everything right. Now you can buy yourself some decent jeans and a shirt instead of wearing hand-me-downs from others." He could hardly wait for the end of classes. His mother's money burned a hole in his pocket, and he wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. No, Diego wasn't planning to put the bills back. He hadn't spent a sleepless night just to abandon his plan. When the poorly dressed young man entered the brand-name clothing store, the staff were extremely surprised. A young saleswoman approached him politely and said, "Young man, I think you may be mistaken. This is very expensive clothing here." The girl wanted to say more, but Diego pulled out from his pocket crisp bills of the highest denomination and deftly fanned them out. He casually glanced at the girl. "What are your coolest jeans here?" The salesperson's eyes sparked with curiosity, but she knew better than to ask customers unnecessary questions. Her job was to provide courteous service, even to such odd characters as this young man in worn-out jacket and shorts. Mentally calculating, the girl suggested which pants would look best on the lanky boy. "Come with me, I'll show you some models from last year's collection. They're not much different from the new ones, but the price is almost half, and you can get a shirt with that amount." The girl looked significantly at the fan of money. A few minutes later, Diego stood in the fitting room, admiring his reflection in a large mirror. He didn't recognize himself. The salesgirl also looked at the young man with undisguised admiration as he transformed before her eyes. "The color of the shirt suits you very well, and the jeans fit perfectly." The young man murmured quietly, "I never thought clothes could change a person like this." He changed back into his old clothes, stashing the new ones in his backpack. He no longer felt guilty about taking the money without asking. That day, he swore to himself, "That's it. No more hand-me-downs." Residents of the buildings where Flora Moreno cleaned felt sorry for her. Everyone knew about her difficult situation and tried to help the single mother. Those who were better off gave her things and bedding. On those days, the woman returned home with a happy smile on her face. "Diego, come see what Mom brought." The boy felt humiliated when his mother offered him worn-out pants, a jacket, or a shirt to try on. But since Diego had no other options to diversify his meager wardrobe, he had to suppress his pride. Throughout most of his school years, he wore other people's clothes, but when he entered the 10th grade, his patience ran out, and he snapped at his mother. "Mom, I'm not going to try on or wear this junk anymore." Flora Moreno didn't expect such a response. She thought her son would be pleased with something new. "Diego, look at these good quality clothes. Why are you so stubborn?" His mother looked pleadingly at her son, but he firmly said, "That's it, Mom, enough. Close your second-hand shop. I'm not wearing this anymore." Grumbling to herself, "These are good clothes, I don't understand his stubbornness," Flora Moreno neatly placed the clothes on the shelf in the closet. Diego checked the stash several times out of curiosity, but one day all the stuff disappeared from the closet at once, and he realized his mother had given it away to someone. After that, Flora Moreno stopped bringing other people's things home. Diego hoped his stubbornness would prompt his mother to splurge on new clothes for him, but his hopes were dashed, so he settled for what he could still put on himself. But after Flora Moreno revealed her secret safe, her son decided to compensate for his personal moral losses with the money she had saved. After the first purchase came the second, and then the third. In the mornings, Diego proudly strutted to school in his fashionable clothes, changing back into his old attire in the school restroom before returning home, hiding the new clothes in his backpack. However, one day this well-organized system almost collapsed. Flora Moreno decided to tidy up the dresser and discovered that money was missing. She called her son. "Diego, be honest, did you take the money?" He understood that resisting was pointless. Nervously, his mouth dry, he murmured quietly, "Yes, Mom, I took the money, but don't worry, I'll pay it all back." His mother didn't scold him. She silently looked at him. After a long pause, she asked, "What did you spend it on?" Diego felt very ashamed and couldn't look his mother in the eye. With his head down, he quietly muttered, "I bought pants, a shirt, and also sneakers. Mom, I'm tired of being a laughingstock. I dress worse than everyone else in class." Flora Moreno dropped her head into her clasped hands and burst into tears. Diego stood there, unable to move, feeling very ashamed of himself and very sorry for his mother, who had given him everything. That incident became a turning point in Diego Rodriguez's life, and the bitter tears of his mother echoed in his heart for a long time. He realized that he had to carve out his own path to a bright and prosperous future. Finding a temporary job in the big city was not difficult, and in the evenings, the young man worked unloading freight cars. When he brought home his first earnings from his own hard work, his mother cried again, but these were tears of a different kind. Flora Moreno held her son's modest earnings in her hands and seemed not to believe her eyes. "Diego, why did you do this? You need to study, you'll learn enough," he proudly said. "I'm old enough now. I'll try to combine what's useful and what's needed." Joy shone in the woman's eyes as she affectionately looked at her son and said, "Yes, you're truly grown up now, but I really want you to live better than me, and for that, you need to study. As long as I can help you, study. Don't put off this important matter for later." Diego didn't argue with his mother, although he wanted to delay going to university. He chose his educational institution randomly, but luck was on his side, and he was accepted into the university where the most modern and sought-after specialties were taught. Studying came easily to Diego Rodriguez, and by the end of his first year, he was among the top students. However, his student life was not entirely successful. It wasn't his poor behavior, but simple greed that negatively influenced the reputation of the young man. The first misstep occurred on the eve of Student Day, when the student group was enthusiastically discussing how to celebrate the holiday. The favorite of the girls and the main instigator of the group, Gaston Navarro, suggested, "Friends, if we each pitch in a bit, I'd be happy to organize the celebration. I promise we'll have a great party." Classmates greeted this proposal with cheers. "Hooray!" Navarro took off his stylish hat and walked in a circle, playfully rallying his classmates. "Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to bid farewell to our money, but the lively student party is worth giving our last pennies. Even if afterwards we'll be living on the free water and bread served in our cafeteria for weeks, the memories of this joyful celebration will warm your soul. But I sincerely hope that our patroness of students won't allow any of us to starve to death." His speech, filled with theatrics and showmanship, brought smiles and a burst of applause, but the main effect was that everyone dug into their wallets and pockets. No one hesitated for the common cause, except Diego Rodriguez, who stepped aside, trying to remain unnoticed. But Gaston was in control and noticed that his roommate in the dormitory hadn't contributed to the communal pot. Navarro approached him and shook his hat, which was already filled with coins and bills. In a loud voice, he said, "Diego, why are you avoiding contributing to the group? Put in as much as you can." Diego Rodriguez forced a feeble smile. "Nah, guys, I can't. My mom is sick, I need to go home." Gaston was clearly disappointed. "Well, if that's the case, there's nothing to be done. Parents' health is sacred," Navarro announced to the classmates in the same booming voice. "Guys, fundraising is complete, which I congratulate everyone on. Now, let's count how much we have in the bank." The girls and guys rushed joyfully to the table where an activist was stationed. Diego Rodriguez was no longer the center of attention. With relief, he exhaled and slipped out of the classroom door. He was glad he didn't have to spend his hard-earned money on what he considered a dubious event. With a light heart, he returned to the dormitory and began preparing dinner. He and Navarro shared household responsibilities and chipped in together every week. This arrangement suited them both, based on fair distribution. As they were finishing up the cooking process, Gaston returned to the dormitory. Seeing Diego, he was very surprised. "I thought you were at the train station." Diego Rodriguez widened his eyes. "Why would I be there?" "What do you mean? You were supposed to visit your sick mother." Diego realized he had been caught in a lie and began to justify himself nervously. "Well, my mom is actually ill, but she's elderly. But I can go tomorrow or the day after." Navarro stared at him piercingly for a moment. "Or maybe you can visit your sick mother in a month. Bottom line, I get it now, you're just stingy, Diego. And a sick mother is a lame excuse for your stinginess." With a confident stride, Gaston walked down the corridor. Diego was in despair. He shouted after his friend. "Gaston, what about dinner? I've already prepared everything." Navarro turned around with a mocking tone. "You can eat my portion, at least that would bring you some joy." "And you?" "I'll have dinner with the guys." Fortunately, not everything in this world is hopeless, and there are people who gladly share their last piece of bread. The next day, Gaston moved to another room. He explained his decision simply. "It will be better for both of us this way." After a brief pause, he added, "I can't stand liars and cheapskates." "And Diego, somehow you managed to combine both qualities. In short, you're a rare specimen." Diego Rodriguez was left alone. At first, he was even glad that he had the entire room to himself. But the euphoria didn't last long, and within a week, Diego felt the full weight of loneliness. Despite cramped living conditions and many dormitory blocks, no one wanted to room with Diego Rodriguez. Thanks to Navarro's loose tongue, news of his fantastic stinginess quickly spread not only through the dormitory floors, but throughout the university. The gossipers openly teased him, and the girls avoided him. Diego once again had to endure the same feelings that had made his school years difficult. But even to himself, he refused to admit that he was to blame for everything. In his heart, he cursed his classmates, but Navarro received the brunt of his resentment. Diego Rodriguez bitterly hated his former friend and made sure to emphasize this for years to come. It's known that fate loves to laugh at those who think they're the center of the universe. After university, Diego Rodriguez struggled to find suitable employment for a long time. He started at a small company, but the team didn't accept the newcomer, and Diego left without a fuss after 2 months. He spent almost a month without a job, deeply troubled by having to burden his mother once again. One day, Diego was riding the bus when his eyes fell on an advertisement in the newspaper, which an elderly man on the front seat was reading attentively. The advertisement was in bold letters, catching his attention. Diego quickly scanned the lines, sensing that this could be his future. HR specialist needed, negotiable salary, monthly bonuses. He felt his wings spreading behind him. The excitement was so intense that he exclaimed aloud, "This is exactly what I need." The elderly owner of the newspaper looked up. "Young man, did you say something?" "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." Diego reached for the printed publication. "Grandpa, could you lend me your newspaper?" The old man was pleased. "Take it, by all means. I've read everything already, just haven't gotten to the last page, but it's all advertisements, and that doesn't interest me." Diego Rodriguez smirked. "Well, one advertisement caught my interest." Diego took the newspaper from the old man's hands. At the next stop, he got off to carry out his plan. He ran towards the building where the office of the company was located, which was seeking a young, promising, and very responsible employee. Imagine his surprise when the candidate for this enticing position was greeted by Gaston Navarro. His former classmate was equally surprised. "Diego Rodriguez, what wind blew you to our shores?" Diego laughed. "You're still cracking jokes, I see. To answer your question, I'm looking for work. I saw the advertisement in the newspaper and decided to find my fortune in this company. And you've done the right thing. We really need an executive employee. Let's go to the boss, I'll introduce you." Diego Rodriguez was a bit taken aback. "Straight to the boss? Why wait? You need a job urgently, don't you?" Without waiting for an answer, Navarro headed down the long corridor, and Diego followed, mentally asking himself, "Is this really the same Gaston who ignored me throughout our school years?" He seemed so confident and well-dressed, quickly rising. "I'd like to be like that too." Navarro stopped in front of a door with a shining brass plaque that read General Manager German Suarez. "The boss is a great guy, came up from the ranks, but he can't stand chatterboxes, so answer all questions clearly and to the point." Diego Rodriguez nodded. "Thanks, Gaston." Navarro opened the boss's office door like he owned the place. German Suarez, I found a replacement for Helio who left. This is my classmate Diego Rodriguez, he was the top of our class. Suarez asked the candidate a few standard questions, which Diego answered without hesitation. The boss pronounced with satisfaction. Well, time will tell what kind of specialist you are. Gaston will fill you in on everything and show you around. Diego Rodriguez was very afraid of repeating his first unsuccessful experience, but Suarez's company had a favorable atmosphere, and everyone tried to help the newcomer. Within a week, Diego felt like he had worked there for at least a year. Diego Rodriguez eagerly awaited his first paycheck. They gave him a slip indicating the net amount due. Diego stared at the slip for a long time, hardly believing his eyes. Wow, if I keep earning this much every month, I could save $1 million in just a year, and it'll double in 2 years. The young man indulged in pleasant dreams, but Gaston's appearance distracted him from his colorful thoughts. Gaston rubbed his hands together optimistically. Well, my friend Diego, shall we celebrate your first paycheck? Diego Rodriguez squirmed in his chair as if it were studded with spikes. He forced a crooked smile and asked nervously, Gaston, is that necessary? Navarro slapped him on the shoulder. Absolutely necessary. It's a tradition that can't be broken. Diego timidly asked, and what if we break it? His former classmate burst into laughter. Oh, Diego Rodriguez, you haven't changed a bit, still as stingy as ever. But this time, you won't be able to wriggle out of it, because there's a saying, if you don't treat the team with your first paycheck, you won't last long here. So, if you want to keep getting a decent salary every month, prepare a treat for the colleagues. The realization that he would have to part with part of his paycheck chilled him inside, and he hastily assured, yes, of course, I'll definitely treat everyone. Just tell me what I need to do. Gaston burst into laughter. No, but seriously, you're a unique guy, Diego. In any business, money is the main thing. But I'll help you out of old friendship, considering we lived in the same room for 6 months, we drank and ate together. So, you give me the money, and I'll take care of everything else. And how much do you need? Navarro named the amount, and Diego Rodriguez said with relief, I thought it would be more, but this is nothing. Gaston said seriously, we're not cheapskates to squeeze every last penny out of a poor young man. These are just symbolic gatherings with coffee, sandwiches, and pastries. We always chip in for big celebrations, and on birthdays, the celebrant treats everyone. Diego really wanted to stay in a company that paid so well, so he reluctantly accepted the rules set here. But the greed of the young employee did not go unnoticed, as this trait showed even in small things, like his reluctance to share paper or lend a marker to colleagues. Some gently teased him about it, but only Navarro could openly mock him. Once, Gaston said, Diego, forgive me for being blunt, but I feel sorry for your future wife. Poor thing, whoever agrees to marry you will condemn herself to a miserable existence. Diego Rodriguez didn't like hearing such predictions and muttered, Gaston, you should worry about your own wife. I don't envy her, because you chase after every skirt. So, it's unclear what's worse, being stingy or a ladies' man. After that remark, the thawed relations between the former classmates briefly turned icy again. Like any healthy man, Diego Rodriguez dreamed of a complete family life, but he hadn't been lucky with women since his youth. The girls he briefly dated in university wanted too much from him. Of course, he was willing to splurge on a modest bouquet of flowers or a cafe ice cream outing, but restaurants or jewelry were, in Diego's opinion, unjustifiable expenses, as there was no guarantee the girl he spent money on would reciprocate. As a result, his romances usually ended at the stage of giving flowers. The girls understood, if a guy economizes on this aspect, there won't be anything substantial from him in the future. He had already had a dozen or so failures, but he didn't despair, believing that he would meet the one who would fit his idea of an ideal wife. However, years passed, and such a girl didn't cross his path. Before New Year's, Diego Rodriguez stopped by the supermarket to shop for the holidays. He knew that at the end of the month, many items were sold at reduced prices. He counted his cash and headed to the aisles with a basket. He carefully studied the price tags and information about the contents of each product, so choosing a set for the New Year's table took him over an hour. But at the checkout, it turned out that he had miscalculated the total. The cashier, flushed with anger, shouted at him, "Young man, either pay up or put the items back." Diego Rodriguez wasn't accustomed to admitting defeat, especially to some impudent cashier. Very calmly, he said, "Please recount, you must have made a mistake somewhere. I only took the items that were on sale." The woman flew into a rage. "I made a mistake? And this fool is telling me that?" Diego calmly requested, "Please don't insult me. I could file a complaint against you." The cashier clenched her chubby fingers into fists. "Son, don't threaten me, or I'll call our security guard on you." A huge guy in a uniform instantly responded to the face command. He hurried to the checkout, where a sizable line had already formed. The cashier nodded towards Diego. "Ignacio, teach this guy how to behave in the store." Ignacio grabbed Diego Rodriguez's hand and hissed, "Did he steal something? I'll shake him down like Pinocchio." The cashier grimaced. "No, he didn't steal anything. He doesn't want to pay, saying I miscounted, but it's the computer that calculates, not me." I tried to explain, but he doesn't understand. "Look at the line we have." The crowd waiting grumbled discontentedly, and Diego realized the situation was turning against him. He took out all his cash, and the cashier said with satisfaction, "That's how you should have started, instead of acting like a tough guy." She counted the money twice. "Young man, it's still not enough. How much more do I need?" The cashier named the amount, and Diego Rodriguez frantically searched his pockets, hoping to find a couple of spare coins, but they were empty. Meanwhile, irritation in the line was growing, and Ignacio impatiently shifted from foot to foot. Diego was ready to curse everyone, including the cashier and the guard, when a soft voice nearby spoke up. "Here's the amount you're missing. Take it." A young woman from the line helped diffuse the conflict at the checkout. However, she directed her message not to the culprit of the hold-up, Diego Rodriguez, but to the cashier. The woman deftly picked up the coins with her chubby fingers and placed them into the correct slot. It should have been done long ago. Standing does not move and does not move. Diego Rodriguez picked hurry left counted products to his store, follow thanked. Diego Rodriguez swiftly grabbed his 2 bags of groceries and hurriedly left the store. As he was about to head towards the exit, his conscience firmly told him, "Diego, you must thank the girl who saved you from embarrassment." He scanned the trading hall attentively and saw that his rescuer had already paid for her purchases. He approached her. "Thank you so much. You really saved me back there." "I'll make sure to pay you back," Diego said gratefully. The girl raised her eyebrows in surprise. "It's not that much money. I won't go broke without this amount." The stranger glanced at Diego without any interest and headed towards the exit. It was evident that the bag of groceries was quite a heavy burden for the delicate girl. Diego Rodriguez hurried after her. "Wait, let me help you," he said. She smirked at him. "You already have 2 bags." Diego skillfully transferred both loads into one hand. "It's not heavy for me at all. After all, I'm a man." The girl handed him her bag. "If that's the case, I gladly accept your help. I'm not used to carrying heavy things. I broke my right arm in the summer, and the injury still bothers me sometimes." Diego Rodriguez took the bag from her hands, and they walked out of the supermarket together. The stranger spoke up immediately. "I live nearby, renting a room from a lonely woman." The young man decided to keep the conversation going. "I work in this area but live in another part of the city. I'm originally from the province, lived with my mom. When she passed away, I sold the apartment and bought a place here. Had to add a hefty sum, but now I have my own place. Though the layout isn't very convenient, it's still much better than a dorm. This time, the girl's gaze lingered on him. I also grew up in a small town and was raised by my mom. My dad died when I was very young. It was a tragic accident at work. He was a construction worker and fell from a height. After my dad passed away, my mom fell seriously ill, and her brother helped us a lot. He still helps me now. Does your uncle live in this city? Diego asked without much interest. She laughed. If he lived here, I wouldn't need to rent a room. No, he refuses to move, although he has all the means. Diego continued casually, what does your uncle do, if you don't mind me asking? The girl laughed again. Uncle Federico, if I may say so, is a local businessman, or rather a farmer. He has a small farm that brings in a decent income. But farming isn't really my thing, so I decided to try my luck in the big city. And how's it going? Hard to say, considering I've only been here for a year. I had plans to juggle work and studies, but it hasn't quite worked out yet. The girl reached out her hand. Let me take my bag, and thank you for your help. Here's where I live. Diego was disappointed by their quick parting. This girl was unlike the others. He felt comfortable around her. With obvious regret, Diego Rodriguez said, It's a shame we've arrived so quickly. We had such a nice chat. I'd like to continue talking. The girl picked up on it. Yeah, and you didn't even ask my name. The young man laughed. Right. Well, it's not too late to make up for that. Diego. He gave a graceful bow, which delighted the girl to no end. Very nice to meet you. I'm Carla. You have a very beautiful name. The girl modestly cast her eyes down but didn't rush to leave. It was as if she was waiting for more, and Diego asked hesitantly, Carla, can I hope for another meeting with you? The girl looked up. Though it was freezing outside, Diego felt the warmth of the spring sun, and the thought flashed through his mind, I want those eyes to look at me for the rest of my life. Carla agreed to a date with him, behaving simply, without any coquetry or other female tricks. The next day, they met. Diego Rodriguez, as is customary in such cases, presented the girl with a gift. True, it wasn't flowers, but a rather original composition made from spruce branches. The gift sparked childish delight in Carla. Oh, how lovely! Subtle and meaningful. Your gift will replace a Christmas tree for me. Unexpectedly, even for himself, Diego offered. Carla, how do you feel about us spending New Year's Eve together? Our meeting at the supermarket could be considered symbolic, and since I'm not cramped for space in my apartment, I have room for a real Christmas tree. The girl immediately agreed happily. I'd love to accept your invitation. Honestly, I have no one else to spend New Year's with. Initially, I wanted to visit Uncle Federico. He's been inviting me to visit for a while, but that plan won't work out due to work. I have to work the night shift on the 1st. Diego Rodriguez cautiously asked, Where do you work? I wash dishes at a restaurant. Of course, the job isn't great, but without better options, I have to earn a living this way. Diego immediately pictured Carla in her dishwasher's work clothes and felt a bit uneasy. He escorted the girl to the entrance and said goodbye quickly. Instead of heading home, he almost ran, muttering to himself, Why am I so unlucky? For the first time in my life, I meet a girl I like, and it still ends in disappointment. How will I introduce such a wife to my colleagues? Navarro will die laughing when he finds out about Carla's job. No, I need to stop these dates. But within a day, Diego realized that setting a goal for himself was one thing, and actually achieving it was quite another. It was especially difficult, practically impossible, to contend with himself when Cupid's arrow had already pierced his heart. 2 days later, Diego realized that all his thoughts were focused on Carla. His heart raced with excitement as he dialed her number, and he heard her melodious voice. Diego, where have you been? Have you changed your mind about spending New Year's Eve together? The young man blurted out the first thing that came to mind. No, of course not. But these past few days, I've been racking my brain over what to give you. Carla laughed. Haven't you realized yet that the most precious gift to me is you? Don't even think about spending money on unnecessary trinkets. Diego Rodriguez immediately felt relieved. Even though Carla had a less prestigious job, she wasn't demanding, and he was sure she would make a perfect wife. They spent New Year's Eve together. As the clock struck midnight, Diego proposed to the girl, placing a metal element from a champagne cork on her ring finger instead of an engagement ring. He solemnly declared, "Carla, of course, this isn't a real engagement ring, but I want our hearts to be joined today." Carla was delighted again. "Diego, this is just amazing, almost like in a movie. I'll treasure this ring for the rest of my life. Even if things don't work out between us, I'll still keep it." Diego Rodriguez felt truly happy for the first time in his life. "Carla, everything will work out for us. We will definitely become the happiest couple on earth." Carla walked home, her mind preoccupied with the upcoming children's holiday. All day she had been trying to figure out how to make a costume of an apple tree that would make her daughter Diana look dignified. But none of Diana's outfits from the wardrobe were suitable for this purpose. With horror, she thought that she would have to humble herself before her husband, begging for money for a new dress for the little girl, and Diego, as usual, would grimace and say, "What she has in her closet is perfectly fine for a 4-year-old. Just buy her that dress, she'll wear it a couple of times, and that's it. Figure something out, but I'm not giving you any money." Certainly, Carla could buy clothes for her daughter with her own salary, but she gave all the money to her husband. This had been the practice in their family from the first day after the wedding, when Diego jokingly suggested, "Carla, to make your life easier in your new role as a wife, I'm willing to take care of the financial side." The enamored woman saw nothing objectionable in this proposal and agreed immediately. "Okay, Diego, let it be as you say." Only a few weeks later did she realize what a fatal mistake she had made. Allocating money for various expenses, her husband demanded an account from her. He collected receipts from stores and stapled them into a notebook. Diego Rodriguez started a new notebook every month. Embarrassing to admit, but even for underwear and personal hygiene items, Carla had to ask him and then report back in the established format. With these unhappy thoughts, she approached her home. Dialing the entry code on the intercom, she thought, "I wonder how long I can endure this." As she waited for the elevator, Evelina Diaz emerged from her apartment. "Carla, how are you? How is Diana doing?" Carla forced a smile onto her face. "We're fine, getting ready with Diana for the autumn ball. She'll be dressed as an apple tree for the event." The pensioner clapped her hands together. "How lovely. There's something about children's parties that we adults just don't understand. They call it sincerity. Children don't know how to lie, they're always honest." Evelina Diaz looked at her young neighbor as if seeing her for the first time. "You're right, Carla, I've never thought of it that way." The elevator door creaked open with a clang, and Carla wished her neighbor well. But before she could enter her apartment, her mobile phone rang loudly. Carla rummaged through her purse, trying to find the device. "Where are you? Where could I have put you?" The phone continued to ring impatiently, but it wasn't until a minute later that she realized it was in the pocket of her coat. Frustrated from the frantic search, she answered irritably, "Hello, I'm listening." The mobile responded with her Uncle Federico's voice. "Niece, why are you answering your uncle so rudely? I've been worried sick, practically beside myself with worry." Carla's mood changed abruptly. "Oh, Uncle Federico, I'm sorry. I didn't check who was calling. I thought it might be another wrong number." Her relative's hearty laughter filled the line. "Look how far we've come. You nearly sent your uncle packing to the ends of the earth. All because you forgot about me in your city." Carla started to explain. "Uncle Federico, no, I didn't forget. I've been planning to visit you, but it just hasn't worked out yet. Work won't give me time off, and Diana has a holiday coming up at daycare. I have to prepare her costume." Federico Ignacio was very pleased with this news. "So, I've arrived just in time?" Carla asked in surprise. "What do you mean, arrived?" "Just by train, as usual." Uncle Federico was clearly in high spirits, which pleased and frightened Carla Rodriguez at the same time. She could already imagine the face her husband would make when he found out about her relative's arrival. But when Uncle Federico asked if they had room for him in their apartment, Carla replied with feigned joy. "Uncle Federico, how can you ask such questions?" "Of course, come on over. I'm already here, standing by the elevator. Open the doors, greet your guest." When Diego Rodriguez returned home from work, he only slightly frowned upon seeing his wife's relative occupying his usual spot in the kitchen. The men embraced, and Uncle Federico hospitably offered, "Come on, Diego, have a seat. I brought some moonshine with me, made according to my own recipe. There's cheese and homemade sausage in the fridge too." Diego grimaced. "What?" Uncle Federico chuckled. "I'm telling you, homemade sausage. I made this unique product myself, the most basic and primitive way, but it doesn't contain any chemicals. You won't find sausage like this in your supermarkets." Diego's gaze warmed slightly after learning that Uncle Federico hadn't come empty-handed. After a brief meal, Federico Ignacio pulled out a somewhat unsightly wallet and accompanied his action with words. "Since I arrived without gifts, buy something that you need. I didn't have time to go shopping." Diego instinctively reached for the money, but Uncle Federico laughed. "What are you doing, Diego Rodriguez? The family budget should be managed by the lady of the house." The guest theatrically waved the bills in front of his son-in-law's nose before handing them over to his niece. "Buy something for yourself and your granddaughter, Carla Rodriguez." The young woman was delighted. "Oh, thank you, Uncle Federico. Diana actually needs a dress for the autumn ball." "Well, there you go, she'll have a gift from her grandfather." Diego glared at his wife disapprovingly but couldn't do anything about it. Carla saw his frustration and secretly enjoyed her husband's discomfort. However, Diego Rodriguez's greatest challenge was yet to come. When Carla Rodriguez cleared the table, Uncle Federico said, "Carla, I didn't just drop by for a visit, we need to handle some paperwork." She didn't pay much attention to his words, thinking Uncle Federico had some business in town related to his own affairs. But after a brief silence, Federico Ignacio sighed. "No intrigue here, it's not even interesting. I thought you would start asking me what papers and why." Diego decided to speak up for his wife. "Don't be offended by your niece, Federico. Carla has been a bit distracted lately, so her brain doesn't always kick in right away. But you can tell me, and I'll explain it all to her later. I intend to transfer my cottage to my late sister's daughter." Diego Rodriguez's eyes lit up again with a greedy gleam. "That's quite a gift. Where is this inherited cottage?" In his typical manner, Federico Ignacio explained. "It's on our estate. Carla should remember it, she used to play there with the local kids in her childhood. I have my own place to live, so I decided not to wait until death and instead pass down Grandpa's house while I'm still alive. I made a promise to her mother and to my own that I would take care of my niece. My sister did a lot for me and my family, now it's time to repay those debts." The guest tapped the tabletop lightly. "So, Carla Rodriguez, tomorrow let's go to the notary, get everything done properly. Then you can manage your property as you see fit, sell it or live in it yourself. Life is unpredictable, you never know where it will lead you." The next day, Carla took the day off work to accompany her uncle to the notary. They spent the entire day gathering documents and then waited for an hour and a half outside the lawyer's office, recommended by Federico Ignacio's acquaintance. When all the formalities were finally behind them, Uncle Federico said with satisfaction, "There you go, Carla Rodriguez, all done. Now you have your own corner. If times get tough, you'll have a place to lean on." After visiting the notary, Federico Ignacio hurried straight to the station, despite his niece's pleas for him to stay another day. I can't linger, Carla. I have responsibilities back at home, and I've just about convinced a neighbor to keep an eye on things for me. By the way, I hope you remember Isolde? The young woman nodded. How could I forget? She really punished us with nettles when we climbed into her garden to eat cherries. I got it worse than anyone. Uncle Federico laughed. I remember that incident well. Your mother was still alive and was outraged by her friend's severity. Oh, by the way, Isolde's son Francisco has returned to the area. Things didn't work out for him in the city. He's now a businessman with his own sawmill, though his personal life isn't going smoothly. Isolde complains that someone put a curse on Francisco. But I don't believe in all that nonsense. Carla listened to her uncle, feeling a melancholy in her heart knowing he would soon leave again. As they approached the train carriage, the young woman quietly said, Uncle Federico, you appeared like the sun from behind the clouds for a moment and now you're leaving again. You could have stayed a couple more days. We haven't really had a chance to talk. The elderly man smiled. The atmosphere at your home isn't conducive to heart-to-heart talks. It would be better if you come visit, then we can have a chat, and you can also assess your inheritance. Carla hesitated. It's unlikely I can make it soon. Maybe I'll come in the spring. Besides, what is there to see? I remember Grandpa's cottage well. Federico Ignacio narrowed his eyes cunningly. Nevertheless, come and have a look. After seeing off her relative, Carla headed to the daycare center. She decided to pick up her daughter earlier to have time for shopping. Diana was thrilled when her mother told her, Sweetie, we're going shopping right now to buy you a dress for the autumn ball. The girl hugged Carla. Mommy, I'll be the prettiest little apple. I've already memorized the whole poem. They returned home tired but satisfied. Diego Rodriguez greeted his wife reproachfully in the hallway. Where were you? And why isn't dinner ready? Carla smirked. If you're so hungry, you could have cooked something quick yourself. My daughter and I were shopping, spending the money Uncle Federico gave us. Look at this wonderful dress we bought. The young woman started to hurriedly unwrap the package with their main purchase, but the head of the family angrily pushed the dress aside. Finding something to brag about, wasting money, and I see you've become too bold lately. Frankly, I don't like it at all. Carla didn't remain silent. I don't like many things either, Diego, but I endure them. Mockingly, he asked, And what exactly don't you like? She burst out. Your pathological greed. I'm tired of begging you for money, tired of wearing worn-out and patched stockings. Diego sneered. If you're so fed up with everything, you can go back to your little cottage now that you're the rightful owner of Grandpa's shack. Carla understood that responding to her husband could lead to another scandal. Exhausted, once again, the young woman chose to stay silent. 2 months had passed since Uncle Federico's visit. The relatively warm autumn had given way to an unpredictable late season. It could rain in the morning and snowflakes could be swirling over the city by evening. Carla had always struggled with such climate swings since childhood and often fell ill. This time her health had also failed. The day before, she had soaked her feet badly because her old boots had completely worn out and she couldn't afford new ones. Carla had hoped her immune system would cope, but by morning she felt achy all over. She had to take a day off work and go to the clinic. After a long wait in line among others sneezing and coughing, she finally saw a doctor. The young physician listened carefully to her lungs and then said, I'm concerned about your breathing. You might need to be admitted to the hospital. Carla panicked. Doctor, I can't. I have no one to leave my little daughter with. Just give me a strong prescription. I'll treat myself at home. The doctor hesitated for a while but eventually relented. Okay, I'll prescribe you one medication. It's very effective but quite expensive. Carla grabbed at the doctor's offer like a drowning person grasping at a straw. Write it down. I'll buy these tablets today. The doctor wrote her a prescription and asked her to come back in 2 days. Carla picked up her daughter from daycare and stopped by the pharmacy on the way home. She knew some medications were expensive, but she hadn't expected prices to reach such astronomical levels. Just in case, she asked the pharmacist, "Could you suggest a cheaper alternative?" The girl in the white cap raised her eyebrows. "I'd love to, but there are no alternatives to this medication. Will you take it?" "Not for now." Carla took back the prescription. By evening, her fever had risen even higher, and she swallowed everything she could to bring it down. Diego silently watched his wife, showing no sympathy whatsoever. Only closer to nightfall did he say with clear displeasure, "I don't want you to infect me. Until you recover, sleep in the living room." His words were the final straw, as they say. Although Carla could barely stand on her feet, she poured out everything she had been holding back against Diego over the years. "Can you believe it? He's afraid of catching something. My dear husband, wouldn't you want to spare me some money for medication? The doctor prescribed effective pills for me, said I could recover in 2 days. So, will you give me the money, or does greed prevent you from showing mercy even to your own wife?" Diego Rodriguez raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Oh, so that's how you're going to talk? Well then, I'll speak frankly too. I don't think it's necessary to buy expensive pills. You can reduce the fever with a simple medicine. Furthermore, I'll say you got sick because you're lazy. You need to move more, then no illness will overcome you." Losing control, the woman shouted, "You move yourself, miser. One day you'll choke on your money, and no one will help you." The man flew into a rage, not expecting such unforgivable insolence from his usually submissive wife. "How dare you insult me in my own house? Get out of here, go back to your shack and live on your miserable pennies." The father's yelling woke Diana. The girl ran out of her room in tears. "Dad, why are you yelling at Mom?" Diego realized he shouldn't scare the little child, but he was beyond reason. "I'm yelling because your mother wants too much. All she knows how to do is demand, and I'm not going to spend my hard-earned money on her whims." Carla lunged at her husband. "So my health is just a whim to you? Money is more important to you? Do you think I don't know you transfer the lion's share of your salary to your bank account?" The man shouted. "How do you know that?" "I saw the statement you left in your shirt pocket, found it when I was doing your laundry." The man lost his temper completely. "You search my pockets? Get out, I don't need a wife like you." Diana cried even louder. "Dad, you're mean." "You too? Since I'm so mean, go away with your mommy. Get out of here." He was beyond control. Carla, holding her daughter close, watched as her husband threw their clothes out of the closet. The woman stood in shock, momentarily forgetting about her illness. Meanwhile, Diego Rodriguez couldn't contain his anger, throwing everything within reach to the floor. "Collect your trinkets and get out, I'll live without you. Carla, you've betrayed my trust, I almost worshipped you, and you turn out to be just like everyone else, selfish and ungrateful." Diana was the first to recover from the shock. Very quietly, she asked, "Mommy, I'll pack everything myself. Can you give me a bag?" Carla packed their belongings into a suitcase and a travel bag. Without a word to her husband, she left the apartment with her daughter. She realized it was pointless to look for shelter at night, but suddenly remembered her kind neighbor who had helped her before. Evelina Diaz was very surprised when someone rang her door so late. Seeing pale Carla wrapped in a shawl and Diana, the elderly woman understood everything. "Carla, come in. I suspect you've got serious troubles, but if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. Either way, I won't refuse to help you." The young woman told her neighbor about her illness and her husband's wild outburst. Evelina Diaz was shocked by her story. "Is your husband really so stingy that he won't even spare for his child? I would never have thought. He seems decent and dresses well." Carla remarked wearily. "He doesn't spare for himself, it's just us, me and Diana, who are like unwanted baggage to him. It's a pity I've only realized this now." Evelina Diaz wisely commented, "Don't worry, my dear, you're still very young, and you have your whole life ahead of you. It's too late for me to hope for anything. Tell me, please, who was the man who visited you in the fall?" Carla looked at the pensioner with interest. "That was Uncle Federico, my mom's brother. He's been living alone for a long time. He came to formally transfer his father's house to me." The neighbor was taken aback. "That's very good. It means you have somewhere to go." For several days, Carla and Diana stayed with the kind neighbor. The young woman tried to settle matters quickly with the daycare center and her job. She still hoped Diego would come to his senses, apologize to her and their little daughter, but that didn't happen. After a week of waiting, Carla finally made up her mind to leave. Evelina Diaz escorted her and Diana to the train station. The moment of farewell was deeply touching, and the elderly woman confessed, "Carla, I sincerely envy you because you have a chance to change your life for the better. I don't have such an opportunity." Carla hugged her neighbor and whispered softly, "Aunt Evelina, I will definitely call you, and I'm sure we'll see each other again very soon." The train smoothly departed, and Evelina Diaz waved her handkerchief. Various thoughts crowded the elderly woman's mind, but in her heart, hope ignited that not all was lost. Diego Rodriguez opened the door to his apartment and scrutinized the hallway critically. He found no signs of anyone else's presence, although he dearly wished to see such evidence. It had been almost 3 years since that night when he had kicked out his wife and young daughter. At that time, he had been sure that within a day Carla would return, tearfully begging him, "Diego, forgive me, I overreacted, it won't happen again." But a day passed, then another, and his wife did not hurry to appear contrite. Diego knew she had been taken in by the neighbor on the first floor. After a difficult week of waiting, he finally called Evelina Diaz's apartment. She wasn't surprised to see him. Without a hint of triumph, the woman calmly informed him, "Your wife and daughter left only today. Carla said her uncle gifted her a house. She went there, and I saw them off." This news only brought annoyance, but Diego wasn't about to give up. Every evening, he mentally argued with his runaway wife, though it resembled more a monologue of a fate-stricken loser. Diego Rodriguez questioned aloud, "So, what have you proven? Only that you're a dim-witted provincial idiot? You'll live in your Uncle Federico's shack, wallowing in poverty, because you, Carla, have nothing to show for yourself. You couldn't even bother finishing college. And believe me, an uneducated woman like you is unwanted by anyone. You should have clung to me with hands and feet, instead of showing your true colors." The role of the ungrateful wife was typically played by a kettle, but sometimes Diego Rodriguez addressed his grievances to the refrigerator or washing machine. With each passing day, loneliness gnawed at his soul more. But he consoled himself with the thought that his hot-headed wife was suffering even more. Diego hardly remembered his little daughter, since from her birth he considered the child part of his wife, feeling no attachment to his own offspring. Yet in Diego Rodriguez's life, there was one thing that kept him going. That motivating factor was his bank account. After his wife fled, he saved almost his entire paycheck, cutting corners on everything, including food. But Diego reassured himself, "It's nothing, just a little longer to endure." Diego Rodriguez's coveted goal was a sum of 10 million. He dreamed of investing these savings in some profitable venture. Gaston Navarro hinted at this possibility after Diego accidentally mentioned his bank account. His former classmate wasn't surprised, he even praised him. "Diego Rodriguez, you're sharp, man. I'll admit to you honestly, I'm also gradually saving up to start my own business, and I even have a creative idea about it. It's quite possible that very soon you and I will become partners. Ah, buddy, we'll get rich together." Navarro spoke to him as an equal, which inspired Diego Rodriguez. Like long ago in his youth, Diego felt wings sprouting from his back once again. He believed all his sacrifices would pay off in the end, and he would live a long and very happy life, with Gaston Navarro helping him achieve this. Several times, Diego tried to start relationships with women, but he continued to face continuous failures on the personal front. Gaston chuckled good-naturedly at him. Diego Rodriguez, you suffer defeat and will continue to do so if you don't change. And what do you think I should do to make women look favorably upon me? Stop being so stingy. I get it, greed has already eaten into your liver, but at least forget about it for a while, show your generosity. Diego understood there was a rational kernel in his friend's advice, but he couldn't overcome his own miserliness. Stinginess had permeated his DNA, and there was no way to change this aspect of his nature. One evening, out of habit, Diego Rodriguez pondered life. Suddenly, a wild idea struck him. If Carla doesn't want to come back on her own, I'll visit her myself, and I'll get a good laugh out of her inheritance squabbles. Diego Rodriguez seized upon this idea and began preparing for the journey. The fact that their marriage had been legally dissolved 2 years ago at Carla's initiative didn't bother him. Diego Rodriguez still believed in his exceptionalism. On the way to the remote village where Federico Ignacio lived, Diego imagined Carla and their daughter languishing in poverty. He even was willing to allocate a bit of money, say $50,000, to showcase his generous spirit. But above all, Diego Rodriguez wanted to humiliate the woman who had dared defy him. His imagination painted impressive scenes of their reunion, and in all these visions, he was the master of the situation while his ex-wife cried, begging him to allow her to return. He once again, like in childhood, desired to linger in this self-created reality, but the suburban train stopped at a small station where he needed to disembark. Diego vaguely recalled the way to the village where Federico Ignacio lived. Although he could have used the services of local taxi drivers, he chose to walk. Several times, he asked rare passers-by for directions to his destination. Strangers answered him in detail, then asked why he was going there. Diego evasively replied, "I have relatives there, I decided to visit." Finally, the traveler reached his destination, but instead of a humble cottage, he saw a 2-story cottage in the center of a well-kept lawn with a pool. The sight left him breathless with surprise. He thought to himself, I must have made a mistake, I should ask the locals again. A woman in a bikini and a stylish wide-brimmed hat emerged from the elite mansion. Diego Rodriguez quickened his pace. I'll ask this lady where Carla lives. The woman also noticed him and waited for him to come closer. The top part of her face was obscured by the hat's brim, so Diego didn't recognize her immediately. He politely greeted the stranger. Hello, I'm looking for a good friend of mine who lives around here. Can you help me? The woman took off her sunglasses, and Diego gasped in surprise. It's you? But how? Carla Rodriguez laughed long and with undisguised pleasure at her ex-husband. After calming down a bit, she said, I knew we would meet again someday, and I imagined this meeting 1,000 times, but I never thought it would be so mundane. I guess you came here to laugh at me, but it turned out quite the opposite. A girl ran out of the house, whom Diego struggled to recognize as his daughter. Diana turned to her mother. Mom, Dad is calling you. Julio woke up and is throwing a tantrum, and Dad doesn't know what to do with him. Carla affectionately looked at her daughter. All right, Diana, tell Dad I'm coming. The girl glanced suspiciously at Diego standing by the gate. Mom, who is this man? Just a passerby looking for his relatives. Carla hugged her daughter, and they walked towards the house together. Diego stood by the gate for a long time, expecting his ex-wife to reappear, but Carla never came out again. Diego Rodriguez was utterly devastated. Only now did he realize that there was something more important in life than money, something that couldn't be bought even with 10 million. It was a devastating blow. But Diego Rodriguez's complete catastrophe lay ahead. When he arrived at the office on Monday, he was shaken by the news his boss delivered. Diego Rodriguez, I'm promoting you to Navarro's position, so be proud and rejoice. A dreadful suspicion burned in Diego's mind, but he still asked, Where is Gaston? Suarez exclaimed joyfully. Your buddy took off urgently. He had amazing luck. An unknown relative gifted him 10 million. Imagine how lucky the guy is. Now your friend can live carefree without a worry. Diego Rodriguez realized that Navarro had tricked him out of 10 million. It was the collapse of his dreams, his entire life, but he could no longer change anything.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.